Have you noticed that a lot of people are worried about the future? They're wondering what is going to happen to them, what's going to happen to your job, what's going to happen to your business. Everything is changing at such a rapid pace. And the question is, what about me? What do I do next? Today, we're going to address that. And how we're going to address that is talking about a comparison. On one side, what if you started your own business? And on the other side, what if you bought a business? So you could franchise or you could start your own. But let's be honest, the writing is on the wall. The safety of a job is going away. Companies are doing mass layoffs, whether they call it downsizing, right sizing, layoffs. The return to office mandate is making people say, I don't want any more of this. But it's okay. It's a good thing. Why? Because you have alternatives now. And I'm going to talk about these two alternatives, and I'm going to give you a third one. And I want you to vote which is the best thing for you. What do you think you want to do when the card playing deck gets shuffled a little bit? So let's dive into this. So what we're talking about today is how do we actually look at the different options that we have, right? Which is going to be best for you? I want you to put in the comments which is best for you, whether it's franchising or owning. Which one do you feel is the thing that's going to work for you? And let me know, put it in the comments if you'd like. And let's see, Charles says, if it's your first business venture, franchise it. And if you're a seasoned pro, build your own. Great advice. I love it, Charles. Thank you. So put your comments in there so I can respond. I want this to be really interactive. And guess what? I, of course, have gifts for you. I always come bearing gifts, and I want you guys to have your choice. So if you're going to want to franchise and you're leaning that way, like Charles said, hey, I'm kind of new, I don't know the ropes, and maybe you haven't had your business, franchising can be a perfect option for you. So then I want you to just type franchise it down below in the comments, and we'll get you that book. And we're going to dive deep into that book today too. And then on the other side, maybe you want to own something. You're like, franchise is great, but there's some downsides to that. And maybe I don't have all that money up front, or I don't want to lose all that money. And so you think, I want to do my own thing. I want to start my own business. I've always had this burning desire to do something for myself. Then you're going to put owning it in the comments down below. All right. So whichever one you want, I've got the book for you. Just put the comment in there. I'll reach out to you and I will give you whichever one you want. All right. No questions asked. If you want some help kind of figuring out which model, like which franchise model or which business model, we're happy to help you with that as well. So this is going to be really fun because I want you to listen to the pros and cons and then tell me, what do you want to do? Because chances are you're going to get right sized, downsized, kicked out of where you're working. And that can go from the highest levels down to the lowest. So it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it's a necessary thing for a lot of companies to really get positioned if the market is going to contract a bit, which it probably is. So here's what we're going to talk about and break this down into chapters so you can kind of see what we're going to do. We're going to talk about why franchising has such an allure and break down the costs so you can see, is it a good investment? How much money do I need? How quickly do I make my money back? What are the limitations? And I'm going to give you some real life examples with all the numbers. So you know, oh, I didn't know that one cost that much, or hey, I could get into something like that. And then we'll kind of wrap it up with the comparison of how about if you want to start your own business. So we're going to go through these really quickly, but remember, please just type in franchise it or owning it, and I'll get you the book. If you're undecided, just type both, okay? And we will get both of them to you, no problem at all. We put a lot of research into this, and I want to start with someone who's quite popular in the news today, Elon Musk. You can't really turn around anywhere without seeing his face somewhere. But what he talks about, and he's expert at starting companies and doing very well and making them very distinguished from everybody else. And what does that do? It makes him a ton of money. And what we always like to talk about here is, how do you do the same thing? You know, you start your business and you're getting all excited. You want to create something grand. But then after a couple of years, you're like, oh dear, this isn't going as well. I'm frustrated. I'm stuck. I'm overworked and underpaid. And so what we want to do is show you how to take that business very quickly and rapidly grow it from 6 figures to 7 figures and beyond. And you can do it and shrink it down to 1 year or less, as long as you have a system for that. And that's what we're going to show you today. So I want to talk about the branding part first. Remember, I've been talking about this for a while, and this is the year of the brand. You have to think about your brand. There's a business brand, there's a personal brand. Which one do you need to do? I have a whole bunch of training on that. I want you to think about, for you, if you're going to pick one of these, you have to understand the concept of marketing. A business is 80% marketing and 20% sales. So if you miss the marketing aspect, you're going to have a hard time growing your business. So how do people pick a brand? It's not just asking for things. Hey, come follow me, come do this. It's about stories. You continue to tell story after story. Every great brand has a story behind it. The question is, do you have a story for your brand, for you, for how you got started? And here's the power of a brand. Now we're going to talk about franchises up front. And a franchise, you know, right? You can see the golden arches and you know that franchise. As some of you know, I started my first job in Arby's, and that's a franchise, right? So people would know, oh yeah, you see that sign, that's an Arby's. You see, a Jack in Box, you know that, right? So I don't have any brand words on this slide, but do you know what those are? Can you tell just by the shape of that product exactly what it is? And I'll bet every one of you can do that. You know that that's a bottle of Chanel No. 5, right? A classic. Starbucks coffee, you know that look and that shape. And of course, Coca-Cola, you know that shape of the bottle, different from Pepsi, and the colors. So branding is very important. That's where having a franchise can really come in handy. So how do you profit with your brand? How do you make the money? Because the brand matters. And if you are maybe $50,000 to $100,000 difference in how much you have to put into a franchise, you really want to think about, where is this going? And so you think about price, but price is what they pay. Value is what you give them. So you have to look at your business. Can you give enough value so that you can stay in business a long time and people will continue to follow you for life? Think about going in, and when you were a kid, I used to use Ultra Bright as my toothpaste as a kid. Do you know I still use Ultra Bright? And it's because now I'm a lifelong customer. That's what you want. So when you make money with your brand and you're trying to figure out, what is this iconic value equation that I need to figure out to make sure I'm picking the right model of the business? And what you need to do is figure out, what is their ideal outcome that your client has? You have to know that. You have to really get to know your audience. And then what is the perceived achievability of that? Say, hey, I'm going to take you from 6 figures to 7 figures. Well, do you believe that? Do you think, yeah, I could do that? Or like, there's no way, right? You'd have to have some information to really believe it from where you're coming from. Okay. And then, so you have to know that. And then you divide that by the time delay. How long is it going to take? If I say I can take you from 6 figures to 7 figures in 10 years, whew, maybe you don't have the stomach for that. I don't. And that's why I say in a year or less. Okay. Because it's a short period of time. If you see the way we do it, you know, it's achievable. And then without the stress, struggle, and sacrifice that we were talking about in the beginning, because we focus on one singular thing. So think about your brand. How do you take those 4 elements and how do you make that a viable brand? Do you give the ideal outcome and the people realize, I could do that? And then they realize it's in a time frame that works for them without them struggling the whole time. That's how simple it is. So know this formula because it's very important. So I want you to cast your vote. What is it that you want? Do you want a franchise or do you want to own it? You pick and I'll get you the book accordingly. So I want to go through some of these chapters here and show you and break this down really quick for the franchises. And then we're going to look at it for the business that you own. Okay. So what's the allure? There's a lot of things like with a franchise, right? You can kind of step into a business mode right away that has brand recognition. You're not trying to convince anybody of anything, and you have a support system there. And there's the likelihood that the company is going to be more successful than if you start off on your own. And the studies actually show that. And I'm going to give you some of those numbers and some of those facts that a franchise in a 5-year mark does actually better than if you start a business on your own. So it is something that you do want to consider. And so what are the ways that we can break down the costs, because there is a cost associated with this. So if we take a closer look at this, there's a couple things I want to go over here. And it's surprising. You might think, oh, I could just start something up. Well, they all have an initial franchise fee, and that's just to get you started. Those fees can range from $1,000 to $1 million, depending on the franchise. That's a big gap. So you have to pay carefully. And then there's a total investment. So that you're going to need upfront for any additional equipment, inventory, maybe some signage. There's costs to the loans that you have to do this, unless you're using your own money or family money, and ongoing royalties. And the royalties are often 4 to 10%. So think about that. 4 to 10% of everything you make is going right out into the franchisor's hands. That's before all of your expenses and everything is taken away. So as you can see, a franchise gives you structure, but it can eat up a lot of your costs. So the other thing that is important to note is that how do you know when you're going to break even? Okay, well, how long does it take? If you're going to put all this money in, how long does it take you to cash out? So here's 3 different examples of different franchises. One is called Express Employment Professionals. It takes them about 3 to 5 years to recoup all the money you put in. Cleaning services are a big thing right now. A lot of these boring kind of businesses. Made This is one that is a franchise, and it takes less than 2 years on their end. Now, Wendy's franchises, they have a shorter break even because there's so much brand recognition, right? A Wendy's when you see it. So you can have a lot of sales, but you also have a very high upfront cost that is going to go with that. And so you're always going to kind of weigh the good and the bad. Which is better? Is it franchise or is it owning? Whichever one it is for you, just pick the book that you want. Do you want the franchise book or do you want the owning book? I will get those to you as soon as we are done here, okay? And so let's look at the return on investment. How quickly can you make your money back? Because what's the point of a business? The point of a business is to make money. Unless you have a charity, you should be making money with this business. So if we want to dive deeper on this and look at how does this all break down, right? Typical margins on a franchise. Now, margins is like, how much do you have left over when all is said and done? 4 to 28%. And then, again, I told you those 2, Express Employment, their margins, like what do you take home out of the whole shebang? 4 to 12%. Game Day Men's Health, also a big growing area. They have about a 35% profit margin. So if you're making $100,000 off of the franchise, you're going to take home about $35,000. Kind of scary, isn't it? You want to know what's average? Do you know what the average number is? The average number in business is that an average business has 50% gross profit and 10% net. That net is the amount that goes in your bank account. And so what's interesting, if you have $1 million business, for many $1 million businesses, they could be making all this revenue, but they might be in a industry and in a market that has a lot of profit, and all that goes down to hardly anything. I've talked to a client who started with around $14 million and he took home $60,000. He had so many expenses and he worked hard to get that. Didn't have anything to show for it. So you really have to be careful. So keep in mind, you have a lot of startup costs, and then franchises don't have that high of margins. So for us, for our company, we look for companies that we can buy and businesses that we can buy. We start looking when it's at 20 to 30% margins. Under that, we don't even want to touch it, and nobody really does. That's why a lot of businesses are sitting on the market for a very long time. Sometimes people just walk away and shutter it because there's no buyers, because they didn't make enough money. And if you're in that situation, your business is not making enough money, and you're like, how do I get more money out of that? Then book a call. Just go to callconnie.com. That's Koni. And we can look at, and I can do a specific analysis on your business, everything that you have going in and going out. And then I'll give you a roadmap, all for free, on what you can do to actually turn that business around, so you can either sell it or have some more money coming in and keep it. And so now what I want to think about is like, what are the good things and the bad things about franchising? Like, everything has its pluses and minuses, right? But franchising does have some limitations. And if you look at some of these, is number one is you have lack of control. There's kind of a vice grip on you on what you can do and what you cannot do. Okay. You also have ongoing costs. And so when you're making money, you have to pay certain things. You might also, what's really interesting with franchises, you think, oh, it's the name is everywhere. Oftentimes they have a pool of advertising money, and you have to kick into that to capitalize on some of that marketing and advertising they do for you. That can be an ongoing expense. There's also contractual expenses. We were just talking with someone who has a franchise and they want out, but there is a non-compete and several other things. And to get out of that and just go out on her own, it's going to cost her $300,000 just to walk away. So you have to understand there's some extra costs that you really want to understand the fine print before you get all caught up in, oh, this is going to be so fun, I'm a business owner. And now, of course, with franchises, you can also own multiples of them, but you can also have market saturation. Like, how many Starbucks do you need in an area, right? And the high initial investment risks. Sometimes you have to put so much money into it, and then you don't realize until you're into it that the company isn't really supporting you. And sometimes they don't keep their promises of what they were supposed to offer. The other thing is that you can have limited growth potential because they might have some rules that of what you can do and what you are not allowed to do. And I've worked with franchises, I've worked with Ace Hardware, and we'd have some great ideas to grow, but then they can't actually do that because it might be out of alignment with their contractual agreement. Make sense? And sometimes people get too dependent on the franchisor and like, oh, I'm waiting for them to do everything. And you really limit your growth. So obviously everything has a plus side, an A side and a B side, and you have to understand all aspects of it before you start diving into the waters. So let's take a look at how much these things cost. Would you like to know that? Would you like to know how much you actually need to put in? How much do you get out? How much profit? How long does it take to break even? There's a number of examples in the book. So I want you to get the franchise book. Just type franchise it if you want it. And let me give you a couple examples. If you want to screenshot this, go ahead. And oh, you can't see it. So we talked about the franchise employees, professionals. It takes about $49,000 franchise fee. Initial investments from about $164,000 to $320,000. Average monthly revenues $400,000, and profit margins are only 4 to 12%. So it's going to take about 3 to 5 years for you to just break even. If you're into real estate, Remax, your initial fee is $35,000, and then your total investment $239,000. How much do you make a month? About 1.8 million. And how much do you take home? Your profit margins are only 6 to 10%. Again, remember that 1.8 million at 10%, that's about $180,000. Takes you about 2 years to break even with that. Ace Hardware, you see these a lot. This is a company I've worked with 5 different franchises on, helping them. And initial fee is low, 5 to 25,000. Initial investment is a lot higher, about 1.9 million. Average is around 4 million. It really depends on the location for that. And average monthly revenue, how much are you bringing in? Around 333,000. Your profit's 35,000. Takes about 6 months to break even. So it's a quick return, but you do have to be well capitalized for that one. How about a UPS store? How about Brown, right? You see these all over, and they're, becoming pretty popular. Why? Because the franchise fee is low. It's 29,000 with the initial investments under $500,000. And monthly revenue is around 630,000, and your profit margins are up to 20%. How long until you break even with a UPS store? Well, about 10 months, right? So you see a lot of times these more expensive ones, you break even faster. However, it's because you have such brand name recognition. And so it is that double-edged sword. You can make your money back, but you definitely need to have a lot up. But let's say you are a victim of a downsizing in your corporate environment, and maybe you were at the top and you're an executive, and it's just like, hey, learning how to make a resume and network is not going to get me there. I want to start my own business, but do you want to take all your savings and put it into a franchise? Maybe not. Okay. So we're going to compare this in a second to some of the other options that you do have. Let's look at a couple more. Again, get the book. Just type franchise it down below if you want to see all of the examples and what you can make in each of those. And so here's a couple more Snap-on tools. I've worked with this company, worked with some franchisors in Canada here. And again, only $4,000 to $10,000 to get started. Your initial investment, again, $465,000. How much do you make? $429,000. High profit margins. And so that's a great thing about this franchise, 30 to 40%. In about a year, you make your money back. Anytime fitness is huge, right? How many fitness trainers, maybe you're like, I'm tired of just doing videos. I want to actually own something. Your franchise fee there is $42,000. Your upfront costs are going to be around $700,000. Average monthly revenue around $100,000. Profit margin is around 16.9%. And now the golden arches, we have McDonald's. Okay, so McDonald's has a starter franchise fee around $45,000. Your initial investment is high, $2.5 million, and the average monthly revenue is higher than that. It's $2.8 million. Profit margins around 20 to 30%. Takes about 1 to 3 years to break even with those. And McDonald's are everywhere. It's, everybody knows if you have a McDonald's franchise, you're probably making about $1 million for one. I know somebody who has 20. So a lot of times when people get a franchise and they get one going, then they start adding more and more and more and duplicating. Same concept of what you want to do in your business, right? So you have to distinguish yourself and your brand. Then you have to disrupt the market in some way, which sometimes franchises are limited. And then you want to dominate the market. And that's what a lot of people do when they get multiple franchises out in a geographic area. You just have to watch for market saturation and competition from fellow franchisees. And then here's a couple more. These are a lot lower. Okay. Again, you're always going to think, what side of the street do I want to walk on? The franchise side or the business side? And these last two that I want to show you, I give you some different options if you haven't heard of them. Fundraising University, your startup costs are $30,000. It's only initial investment of $60,000, but it can go up to $560,000. Your average monthly revenue is around $54,000. So that's around $600,000 a year. Your profit margins are 18 to 20%, so it's about 2 years. And then here's an interesting one that I wanted to share with you guys, and that is Dryer Vent Wizard. So I don't know if you've heard of them, but $30,000 to get started for your franchise fees, your initial investment, 150 to 350, average monthly revenue about $25,000, and then your margins are 20 to 30%. So again, a smaller return as far as how much you're making, but it also takes less to get in. And maybe if that's the route you want to do, you can then take some of your profits and maybe add some more so that your monthly revenue can start going up a lot higher. And as you add more of the same, right, you don't have exponential growth on your time, right? And so it's actually less time when you have more. So that's one of the benefits that you have with the franchises. So what do you think? Do you want to have a franchise, or are you thinking, wait, I want to hold out. I want to see if I just did my own thing, right? And there's so many thousands of franchises and you go to all kinds of conventions. But the question is, are you being sold? And then you get into it and then you're like, I don't really like this business. So and then you're trying to get out as quickly as possible. And you could incur some costs with that. So let's take a look at the other side. Okay. Let's take a look at owning your own business. And obviously I have a bias to this because I've owned my own businesses since I was a teenager and turned them into $1 million businesses from scratch. So I know there's a process to do it, right? If you knew there was a way to do it and make it work, wouldn't you do it? Of course you would. So if you do want a blueprint for whichever business you're doing for 2025, whether you have a business now, whether you're switching and making a pivot, whether you're in a corporation and you want to get into some business because you know your job is on shaky ground, then go ahead and just type callconnie.com. We'll go ahead and analyze your business, give you a whole printout, and give you structure. So the thing that's beautiful about a franchise is you have some structure and SOPs and everything is outlined for you. But there's actually the same process for having your own business. There is a format. It's just most people don't know it and they don't know how to put it into play. And so there is an anatomy to scale. And it is as simple as those dots you see on the screen. So imagine that. Think of it like hopscotch. You just have to hit the certain dots and get to the other side. And that's how it is with business. So if you're trying to grow your dream business, you do need to have a specific plan. If you don't know how to create a plan, then you need to get somebody to help you. We're happy to do that, or find somebody else. So here's the 4 things you want to think about when you're picking your business. And this is going to help you figure out, is this business going to be profitable? And what do you guys think? Franchise? Okay, we have another vote here. Oksana says franchise it. Awesome. Go for it. I love it. Having structure, there's a lot to be said for that. And the business model is really what makes you successful. If you have a model you can follow, then you're going to have great success. Most people fail because there's no model that they're following. So if you need a model, let us know. So if we look at the 4 things that you have to know in order to have a great business, let's take a look at these, okay? Let's do it the iconic way, not the old way that people do. You need these 4 things. Number 1, do you have it? Do you have an it factor? Meaning, do you have like that personality to go out and do this? Do you have maybe a celebrity factor around you that you can put around your business? Or do you have that it factor that you're just going to put your nose down and you're going to grind and you're going to do this thing and you're not going to quit and you are relentless? Then this is a great option for you. Does it work? Does the model work? This is easy to find out with franchises. And if you're going to start your own business, you have to know, do you have a model that works? If you don't know and you want your model checked, let us know. Go to callconnie.com. We'll help you out. Is it easy? Meaning, how simple is this to do? If it's not simple, you're going to get bogged down in the details and you're going to go too long without making your millions. And is it fast? Speed is everything. Speed is sexy, right? People love fast and people want fast delivery. It's why we have Prime and all this stuff. But you also want to get your business growing fast. You don't want it to take years and years and years because most people just burn out. So those are the 4 things, okay? Do you have the it factor? If you don't have an it factor and you're just not going to work hard, I don't think this might be for you, having a business. If you don't have a model, then you need to get somebody to give you a model or go into a franchise where they have a model. And I'm going to show you a third model in just a second that I think you guys will really love. So what you need is a process, a model. Okay, we call it a geometric product sequence, and there's step-by-step pathway, a roadmap that you're going to go through. And this is for any kind of business. It doesn't matter if you're a mom and pop or a $200 billion company. The same model works for every company. You have to hit all of those boxes and check everything off. And this is how you go from 6 figures to 7 figures in 1 year or less. It is this GPS model. Think of the GPS like a navigation to get you to where you want to go. And so every business needs this. This works for franchises. It works for your own business. It works in a hybrid model. And so you also want to think about, what if you start your own business? You can start your own business on your specialty, but I want to give you a concept to think about that's a little bit different. And that is, if you know something well, let's say I want to start a gym because I'm really into fitness and I know it well, or I want to start a nursery school because I'm really good with kids or something like that. Or I want to start a salon or a hair salon because that's my specialty. I've been doing it forever. My challenge for you is, yes, you can do all those businesses, and then you usually are a solopreneur and getting out there and figuring your way through the rough oceans. My concept for you that I want to have you think about is a hybrid. If you're so good at these things, why not actually be the expert, right? Be the leader others want to follow and actually become a consultant for the industry and the business that you're so excellent at. And let's take a look at why I'm telling you this, because it's actually a really interesting way to look at something without having to have high costs and a lot of worry of whether or not you're going to make it. The startup costs are so much lower, like 10 times lower than a franchise. And the profit margins are, like, as you can see, 7 to 10 times higher. 70 to 80% profit margins. If you're making $1 million, you're taking home 700 to 800,000, not 100,000 as you would with a franchise. You have a lot more flexibility and control. You decide who your clients are, when you work, and what your parameters are, your geographic locations, everything. And the break-even potential on this is so much faster than doing your own business or even doing a franchise. Okay, so think about this. If you're good at something, and that's why you're going into business, that's what a lot of people are telling you. Hey, do what you're really good at or what you're really passionate at. But oftentimes, if you're good at something, you still don't know how to run a business. Okay, but you know how the genius of that art that you know how to make that work, and that's what people need. So why not consult in the industry that you are passionate about, instead of trying to knock your head against the wall, trying to figure out business and your passion, because you'll probably end up hating your passion. Have you ever thought about this in this way? So think about this, right? This hybrid model works. And why does it work? It works because you have structure of a franchise, which is why franchises do well, right? The structure. So now with a consulting hybrid model, then you have the structure and then you have the support. Okay. So what you do is you have the support of the like, for example, in our company, we do this hybrid model and we bring on business consultants and set them up in like a franchise type model. It's called turnkey. And so that you can literally turn the key and get your business started, and everything is provided for you. So you have the structure. And so now you have the support. You don't have to worry about putting everything together. And then the most important thing about business is you have the freedom. But you know what people always want to know is, like, does it work? You know, if I did this hybrid model and you follow the model that we do, I'll tell you, you can see some examples. Scott had his first event. This is all within the last 2 months. Colton got his next client within the first month. Craig had a company with $6.5 million of revenue that he's consulting with. Makes $5,000 a month from one client. Sonia, another week, another client. Richard, in his first 30 days, got a $60,000 $1,000 client. So do you see how this is a lot different than what a lot of people have been doing and thinking about? Not coming with anything really up front, but actually making all the money back up front and getting your first client in a month. So if that sounds appealing to you, the hybrid model, go ahead and reach out to me. Go to callconnie.com and I'll show you everything that you get, how it works. And you're like, well, I've never been a consultant. How do I do that? Well, what if we had everything to teach you so that you came off as an absolute professional right from the beginning? And that's the hybrid model. Start a business of your own so that you can come and go as you wish. You don't have to worry about competition or high outlays of cash, but you have your own model with the framework and structure of what makes a franchise work. This is called turnkey, and this is the hybrid model. So if you want to learn more about that, you can just type callconnie.com, just type hybrid down below, and I'll give you a series of materials that you can consume, some videos, reports, case studies, whatever you need to see how does this stack up to going out on my own or going into a franchise. So I hope this has helped you today. I want to know which is best for you. After you hear all this, do you like the franchise model? Do you like the idea of owning it? And if you own it, do you want to do it as a solopreneur, or would you like a hybrid where you can get all the benefits of a franchise without having to pay for a franchise? So you let me know what it is you like. Pick which book you want. I will send them to you. And then I will see you here next Tuesday at 5 p.m. for Iconic TV Live. Be iconic.